Reflective Podcast.
Blessings. Welcome back to the Fully Reflective Podcast. We are reflecting here in this moment, and with great joy and ease and effortless cognitive bliss, I join this moment with a brother and one of the first people that I interfaced with, and I was like, ooh, that's mirror consciousness. And we had a very funny way of meeting in, I think, 2019? So who knows? I don't know if it's technically Jim Klein or technically Jamuna Das or technically some other term. But I know you as Jamuna. Jamuna, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Yes, I like that. I like the specificity of your introduction. Thank you.
I'm glad. Yeah. Well, I think there's so many rabbit holes and mathematic angles that we could come into this with. So I figure might as well be specific.
Right.
And although I suppose I could, yeah. So I met you in the backyard of some place in Venice, and you roll up on this bicycle and you have like a construction worker vest on, and I mean, kind of a similar outfit. You got a hat on like this, like a hoodie. A bunch of stuff was in your bicycle basket, and it was an event that was like all about consciousness. I think it was because Burning Man was happening, up the road or whatever. We were in Venice, and it was called Burning Woman, and it was some friends that were putting on this event that was all about feminine intelligence, and there were speakers, and I performed. I did some speaking. It was one of the first places I spoke publicly about Christ consciousness and reflectivity, the reflectivity of consciousness. And then it was towards the end, and that's Malachite in the background, ad-libbing.
Maybe we're the ones who are ad-libbing, actually.
Right. He's the main. And then, yeah, you were in the middle of this group of people, and I think it was Substance, beloved soul sister Substance, who said, "Excuse me, sir, would you like to say anything?" And that was all the introduction you needed. And you took that baton, and I think you didn't stop talking for a solid 7-8 minutes and talking to us about us. And I mean, there's maybe 15-20 people there, and you went on a soliloquy about really holding up a mirror of what we were doing there. It's like, this is happening all over the planet, and also it's one of the more elevated signals and frequencies that are happening on the planet, where people come together to raise the planet's vibration by being in a loving way, but also sharing wisdom and doing these kind of things. And that was the night that I met you. And then we sat at Air One there soon after. And I don't know if that's when you gave me more of the breakdown. I think actually the Peace Palace was the first time I heard your actual story. But I don't know, you could probably just start in so many different places, but is there a way that if somebody were to come into your world and you're with them now, and they say, "Who are you?" or "What happened to you?" or something mentions about spirituality or enlightenment or something, and they say, "What about you? Do you know anything about spirituality or enlightenment? How do you respond? What do you say? Who are you? What happened?"
Good. Okay, so let's do this. You ask me, "Who are you?" Ask me that.
Who are you?
Okay, who's asking?
This one who's curious.
This one who's curious. I like that. Okay, I like that. So, in thinking about these introductions and thinking about what the truth is to each answer and each question, because the question and the answer are simultaneous. The answer is always embedded in the question. Otherwise, we wouldn't know to ask the question. What happens is we get the impulse of wonder to find something out, and that comes out in a question. Now, just the fact that our attention is drawn to that something, whether it's an idea or a thing, things are ideas manifest in physical reality, obviously, but so that we have to fill in the pieces. And so what happens is, and I learned most of my, I would say, graceful communication skills, which have taken quite a long time. Apparently, I can be a bit of a brute. Here's the math, eat it. Do it, it's the math.
I want to talk about math for sure. I
Oh,
would love to talk about math because that's
sure.
something that you and I've found great solace is the word, or harmony in communicating with you about. It is what it is. It's just math.
Right.
But if someone would say, "Ooh, I like that," what is math? When you
Okay, so that's a good question because um, see, the math never lies. The math is simply what is, okay? Like in a certain construct, here's a bowl, okay? Well, there's a mathematical equation that creates every single particle point on in that idea maintaining its shape in the physical reality, okay? That's the math. Now, that the math never lies. However, the split mind, which is what we were all given coming into this earth matrix, that's the trick, is okay, you're going to give in a split matrix and now you have to find balance, but you're coming from imbalance already. And so the ego, see, once we understand why we're here and the rules of this game, which we weren't told. Okay, all we were told when we came in is we were shown the brochures in the spirit world. Wow, singing birds. Wow, all the children singing. Whoa, hippopotamus is calling to us. Ah, everything. Zebras. Whoa, you can ride them. This is neat. Oh my God, flowers. Whoa, more birds that are singing. Oh my God, everything's singing. The trees, everyone's singing. My God, everyone's in harmonic frequency. This is incredible. Are you kidding me? Of course we're going to go see it. Wait. There's one thing you have to know. You're not going to remember where you came from. What do you mean? What are we talking about? You'll see us in a while. Wait a minute. No. You won't remember because that's the truth. Your trick is your memory is going to be pulled. You got to remember. Okay, we're going to put signs everywhere. Those singing birds, all those things. Those are all things for you to remember. Okay, you're in a loving place. You're in a harmonic balance. That's the math of it. Okay, and then we're thrown in here, and our mind is jumbled just out of balance. So we
that
create. Go ahead.
that's the old paradigm that this whole quote unquote awakening thing is happening as a response to, because the old split mind became the normal.
Exactly. And because it's so extreme now, because in a minute, as we know, things are about to flip. That's why these, in concert with the shift in our mind, naturally is our physical environment, hence tornadoes and storms and everything that's going on. This is just the start. The volcanoes are starting to activate everywhere. And because the normalization factor is so comprehensive, and we can't imagine in a split mind, first of all, when we split, it means we're splitting from our spirit. And our spirit is the only thing that gives us life.
So a synonymous term to what you're saying is when we fall into the dualistic world, we stop being unified and we turn into a splitness, us and them, mine, not mine. It's quite literally the birth of ego, right?
Exactly. That's perfect. The birth, which is, it's funny. It so reminds me of this story with Fred Siegel, who you know obviously who he is, and
Who was a
Freddie,
mentor for you and a dear brother and a guide. Yes.
yes, Freddie has been my primary mentor, apart from my dad, of course. So father is from for probably 25 years, and Freddie had a stroke, and he had a huge part of his skull taken off because of the swelling. And this was, a number of years, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. And so they took the skull off, and I was guided not to see him. Don't see him. Don't call him because he wants to know, where's Jim? Go, no, don't see him because he'll have an excuse, to leave. Okay, now I can go. No, don't see him. And I was guided very carefully by my spirit guides. And So I'm like, come on, I got to see him. Nah, month, 2 months, 3 months. Finally, they had me go ride my bike up to his house at 6:37 in the morning. And outside there's a banner, I was saying, welcome home, Freddie. I'm laughing, oh, okay. And I kind of snuck in the back way down the stairs, out in his bedroom. And the door was open, everything. And there he is all wired up in his, with his body just coming out of the hospital. And he, and I kind of like jiggles of his toe, and he looks up, he goes, oh, he goes, Jim. I go, Freddie, how you doing? He goes, oh, I go, now I knew that he was going back to UCLA in 2 days to have the skull put back on. Okay, which is, kind of a tedious thing, and, in the physical reality. And so he said to me, I'm leaving my body on Thursday. I said, knowing that he was going to get his thing put on, I says, no, you're not. He said, he looked at me, I said, your ego's dying. You're not. And his eyes got wide. And he said, oh, and there was a part of him that was like, oh shit, I have to stay. And he taught me that. He taught me really how to function. The reason he was able to navigate the physical reality with such masterful supremacy. And I've watched him when markets were crashing. I mean, the early part of the, whatever the 2000, whatever year it is, I don't know, I'm not linear, but another than this century idea, when the market just collapsing, and I went over and he was doing the math. The math was, I said, how you doing? He goes, shit. He goes, I made 150 grand, about a couple minutes ago on the market. I just can't stand, I hate selling, he sold short. He did the, basically he bet against, in the futures. And so he doesn't like to energetically do that. He doesn't do nonprofit, because everything is for profit, but redefine it. It's for the profit of everybody. Make as much as you can and give as much. And God knows what he facilitated. People don't know, but this was a man who was friends with Gorbachev, the Dalai Lama, lots of people, because he was the center because of his math. Because he always knew there was one unified field and we were split, and he knew it, and he was very clear on it, and he was no nonsense about it, and he didn't care what people thought about him, because that skewed math. The minute you care, oh, I hope they like me, then what does that mean? Then you spend your energy of your mathematical grid. All of our mathematical grids are to be a prismatic assistance to this world. Whatever it is, each of us have a full mathematical grid that when we are fully embodied, and all that takes is the breath, as because your path, I love your path. Your path is so fun and exciting to me, and in tandem with Ted's, it just tickles me so, because the math, it's mathematical interleave, and each of these equations that we have in our individual math interleaves with everybody around us. The trick is in the split, there's always that thing to go and stick. So the math doesn't work. The math doesn't work. That's what the split mind does. Because the unified mind is like, I don't know, what came to me this morning, I took a walk like early before, just as the sun's coming up, and I was shown like mathematical like equations of the body, and the body is like that. Our bodies always want to always move to health. It's our mind that takes them to disease. It's them, because our math is so perfect that our bodies will always, we could, that's why Methuselah was 900 years. Of course, you're supposed to be here a long time, because you don't have the, go ahead.
Which is a sign of the times, because now so many are looking for others to take care of their bodies, because they are only really identified as their mind.
Yeah.
So their split has got so thick, or the gap has got so wide, that then you need someone else's permission to put a medicine in, or you need someone else's guidance to put a,
Right.
what you think is it going to help you in a sickness, and you don't even know what the sickness is. So you're like, oh, well, they seem to know. And it's exactly. It's this big split of the herd. Is you mentioned something, you started to talk about Fred, and like, he was the center, and we've talked about different individuals that have that math. And I've told you a lot about being so close to Ted. And look, that's beautiful when it happens. And you and I be able to talk about this. But the reality is that most of our brothers and sisters in reflections look to that as inspiring, but don't experience it super often.
Right.
What do you, what language do you put to that as, one more thing, addendum, as I mentioned last night, I was talking about Tetris and you said, what's that? That's just great. But it's a game, right? It's a game where geometry clicks in, which couldn't sound more accurately describing what math is. Geometry clicks in and it fits in puzzle pieces. So having some that don't know and then having others that know, it's perfect because they're meant to be together.
Exactly.
But I mean, imagine anybody listening to this, who is intrigued by spirituality, who's intrigued by alignment and clicks on podcasts, clicks on self-help books because it's magnetized, that soul essence is magnetized to that unification. What is it to be in the center, to be the one, and to be, what is that you pointed at Fred being? What is that?
That's a good question. What that is knowing that you are not the one.
What do you mean?
that you are of the one, and that you are letting your ego go. So you're not in interference and you're not biasing in any way whatsoever. So if someone walks in, this person murdered 16 people, that one did this one, and this one is a good citizen. And you sit there and you treat each of them exactly the same.
Because the mind wants to reference social hierarchy and then place value on good and bad. And that all lives in the mind, you're saying?
All of it in the mind.
And the more you live in the mind, the more split you really are.
You're completely split, because then you're no longer having an experience. It's like, we hear a bird sing, we go, oh my God, that bird song is incredible. And we see the bird, we go, wow, look at that feather. And then what happens is, and this is what Freddie would always talk about, he'd say, the thing that destroys life is narration. Destroys it.
When we talk about trauma and the pain body, we often describe it as that's that narrative in the mind that's causing you to think that this is happening when it's not. It is what it is. How you're narrating it is causing the pain to amplify.
Exactly. And so what happens is the split mind goes, oh, what kind of bird is it? Oh, let me check. And you're no longer with the bird.
You're no longer seeing the bird. You're looking for a mind label to point at the experience of what is really the bird.
Exactly. And all that is a fear of sustained intimacy.
I was about to say that connection can be so intense, which is really what these psychedelics, the mushrooms, the plants, they bring us into this, that orgasmic, oh my God, it is, oh my God. That's a good response. Oh my God, because it's so amazing. But the mind says, I love talking about it in how many steps removed. So the first thing is, that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, I gotta check my phone. What's that called?
Right.
And the third thing is, oh my God, I gotta tell Susan about this.
Right.
They're how many steps removed are most, especially because of the digital.
Yeah, that's a really accurate and very important step that you've just articulated, because what that says is that in the split, this is really important, Rocco. This is great. That's a great equation, because what it says is that here's the experience. 2, the split mind will go, oh my God, stop from the intimacy. It's more than I can handle. And then the third one is corroborate this reality. Am I real? Is this real? What's going on? Corroborate this. And that's so brilliant that's what I got to call and tell Susan. That says it all. Oh my God, I'm having so much fun. There's a billboard. I got to call and tell Susan. Is this really happening? Right. Susan knows it's happening. And so for every moment, the split mind, instead of going with the intimacy and simply going into and going, wow, bird, I love you. If you, whatever you are, pájaro, it doesn't matter language, creature, spirit who is singing to me, thank you, and sing back.
Okay, beautiful segue here, because although, yes, to realize you are the one is to really say, I'm not the one. And that's this beautiful paradox to play with. However, true art, okay, let's segue this into now embodied artistry. Because if you're really in the art, like this beautiful thing behind you is a collaboration between you and your beloved, correct?
Yes.
these other creations that you've been, which I don't know if we have, if it harmonizes to do so, but I think it's very interesting that you were Jim Klein and then you had an experience and I look at it as a flower is the flower, and then a new bud happens, a new budding. This is
Yeah.
for me what happened to the whole moon thing. I was Rocco Nugent.
Yeah.
That's all
Yeah.
that I had.
Yeah.
And something happened. And a moon showed and this whole flowering happened. So
Yeah.
as an artist, Fred's an interesting thing. Ted, I mean, Bell and I were just up there with Ted, and this guy, you know what I mean? Whether it's a gun in his hand or talking about the consciousness of things that do work or don't work, or he's signing his hat. I mean, this guy's a laser beam, and nothing exists anywhere else. It's
No.
here, and it's so present, and it's fun, and then it's intense, but it's all here, and it reminds me. And then hearing Bell's just precious laughter of like in the background, I'm like, man, it's true. This guy's a freaking rare cookie, man.
Yeah.
So segueing that back into and then Malachite, right? A puppy, a dog, a kid. They're in this all the time.
Yeah.
And so artistry is really like if you live in the tell Susan frequency,
Mm-hmm.
you can't ever really create. You're like replicating.
Yes.
You're
That's
never gonna feel God's love as an
right.
expression of creation because before you can express it, you're thinking about how others will feel or see or look and perceive the expressions. You'll never
Exactly.
express.
Exactly. And so
What?
actually in that, that's a good point, excuse me, but do you
Yeah.
say, we'll use the word God, but I say, I use it, I mean, God is guiding our destiny, the energy field guiding our destiny. And what happens is in that moment is instead of staying with God, staying with the energy of love guiding our destiny in every moment, we leave it because we don't trust that that's actually what's happening. Oh my God, this is really happening, because the ego will say, okay, no, it cuts us. The ego's job is to cut us off from spirit.
Which, as far as I can tell, what you just described is the whole biblical allegory in a half a second. And it happens every day, all day long to most people. And they don't fall from heaven and then they live their life. They fall from heaven every few moments because the ego cuts and creates that width, creates that distance between, okay, this is a great segue too, us and it is God, Father. What's up with all the man? There's a man up there, but where's the divine feminine? What's up with all this?
Well, that's a good point. Okay, that's a question I've asked my whole life, and it's why anytime I've said he, God, I thought, what the hell? Something didn't seem right to me about it. And just recently, I would say, I mean, recently, the past couple of days, it's like there's been that aspect of like understanding. It's like, okay, what's the deal here? All the genderfication of creation. And what comes to me is this, is that Krishna is the energy field, appears in lots of different ways, is that actually Krishna means love. That's what Krishna means. Okay.
Which Christ means love as well.
Right. So however it forms, Christ consciousness, Krishna consciousness, it's all the same it's the consciousness of love. And so anytime we move away from our center, okay, meaning moving to our minds, then we immediately ascribe gender and blame, because the women blame the men blame the, and now it's more than anything that any man and woman can share space and time in the same room is anybody, no matter, it's not a matter of lack of love. We all love, I mean, crazy about each other, but it's just what's happening is because the male math and the female math have gotten in the split mind so mixed up. That's why all these gender confusions and issues is about.
And hyper identification within the gender and not spirit.
Exactly. That's all there is. And so the question you asked, because I was circuitous, you asked something very specific.
Well, I got a new baton. Well, I trust it'll get us back into the thing.
Okay.
I wrote this song, which I didn't write it just flowed through, but it said there's no such thing as away from. It says that something like it ain't no such thing as stepping back or something like that. Something along the extent of like, oh, you think you can pause? You think you can wait? There is no waiting.
Right.
All it does is it adds a wavefront energy as your emanation signal. So it's like the idea of moving away from versus moving towards. There's only towards. It is circular, and it is multi-directional, omnidirectional. It's not
It's quantum. That's what quantum is.
It's quantum, and that's how our soul's effulgence, emanation, genuinely expresses in the quantum field. Exactly. And so to think that, this is what procrastination is on a quantum level. There is no procrastination. You're just saying no.
No, you're saying no to the moment.
You're just saying no to the now. That's how your forward signal is backwards energy.
Yes, exactly. That's a really good point. And, one of Freddie's kind of obsessions throughout his life was changing the vernacular. These are the whole vocabulary. We have to change everything. We have to change.
I remember you really leaned into me about the whole, when we were talking about filming and shooting, you're like, enough with the shooting. I was like, makes sense. And then this hyper gentrification and genderfication, and it's creating a deeper gap between the soul self. And then you mentioned Krishna, and I've had this moment now several times, especially with bless her heart, my mom, Shemaine. But I use any kind of yoga words and I kind of see this little mini cringe. But for me, I know Krishna is Christ. I know Christ is Krishna. It's the same mathematics for me. It's like, Krishna's not Jesus. It's like, you're kind of looking at the wrong thing here. It is, and yes, I understood that it isn't. But you're looking in the world of duality, and you're hyper emphasizing the little minute differences and stuff. But when someone's really embodied in their prismatic mathematics, which prism, I would say that your soul's electromagnetic structure is like a prism. The crystal that prism is akin to is the Christ and is Krishna. So that which no one can get to the Father except through me, that me is the crystal prism. It is the Christ. And when someone's that's a
really good way to put it, actually. That's a good way to put it.
Blessed. And when someone's really in connection with that and really embodying that, and whether they identify as it or they identify as, when they're in it and they're in their, we call it 0 point. When there's 0 point, when you and Iris are painting, or when you're creating or sculpting, that to me is 0 point God consciousness, love consciousness, unity awareness. They're not separate from the art. They are literally, they're woven into it.
Exactly.
And it's a different bandwidth of consciousness that, I mean, it is, you ever seen in, I was gonna say, it's a different bandwidth of consciousness that I sense that it's the genuine majority of humanity looks at as if it's this fairy tale, but it's right under their nose kind of thing. It reminds me of this science experiment from like middle school or whatever, where you got like a beaker and you pour the water in, you pour maple syrup, you pour these different liquids and soda, whatever, and then they on their own land in different places in the beaker because they have different density. Exactly. Some are more soluble.
Exactly.
Some are heavier and denser, and they just sink to a specific place and they match up against it, and that's that coagulation. And so we haven't really talked much about the law of one. I know that you've had your firsthand experiences, and then I'll mention like a text to you or a game like Tetris, and you're like, what's that? And I think it's great. I think it's part of your framework's like genius frequency, that you can't be linear and read a book or know what time it is, or like, I think these are part of what has happened to you in a good way. But part of what really has helped my understanding and ability to articulate it from a space of knowingness is the understanding of the densities. I mean, it's as real as like, yeah, that's wood, and then this is air, like that's air. And then
you have to keep correlating it to this physical reality, so the material-based mind can comprehend it and
yeah,
step it gently in by giving a spoonful of spirit, spoonful. We're actually stepping the math, our own math. Okay, we have to step our own math because we're all concretized into this. Oh shit, where are my keys? And it's like Freddie said to me years ago when I said, "How's this going to work?" He said, "What?" I said, "How's this going to work? How's peace going to come to this planet? All the people who are supposed to be making peace are going out and they're buying this and houses and doing shit. All the people who are in the position to do it, all the people who profess how." And he said, "You got to sell it." He said, "You got to sell me." I'm like, "What?" I said to him, "What?" He says, "Yeah, you got to sell me." Now, I thought, holy mackerel. And then, I went away, came back. I didn't see Freddie for a couple of years. I didn't see anybody. And, we just continued the conversation. And I understood completely what he meant, because what he was saying to me is, you're from a different matrix. You don't have linearity. Okay. You have math. It's not any easier for nobody, no matter what. Nobody on this planet has it any easier or harder than anyone else. Nobody's better or worse than anybody else. Everybody just has their experience. And that's interesting when you're talking about the embodiment of the art, because just the other day I was talking to Iris about it, and in terms of our art in this, actually the embodiment. And I said, what amazes me, I said, I love like watching you paint. I love your process. I love painting with you. I learn so much. She's has such an astonishing facility and vision. I said, the thing is for me, is I've always been an automatic creator. So I don't even remember painting. I remember the feeling, but I've painted thousands and thousands of paintings, lots of spirit paintings. And I don't remember. As soon as it's done and there's an electrical charge, I go, whoa, I look at it and I go, oh, geez, did I just paint that? I really don't. I don't have any memory of it. I do have memory painting with Iris. I said, what's amazing to me, Iris, is that for me, what you do is so much, it's impressive. To me, it's so impressive because you're actually, like dealing with the physical reality and molding it onto the page and the frame. You're molding it in, where I'm just bringing spirit in, and it ends up on the page and people go, whoa, what is that? I go, right, exactly. But for me, it's like, I look at what you do and I think, wow, it's unbelievable that you can actually grapple with the physical reality and put it into the page. So there's different. So now creating together. And when we first started creating together, we did these massive paintings, 4 by 6 foot paintings on sheet metal, and oil and sheet metal. And it was like, whoa, the complete embodiment of one. Okay. And the paintings were just holy mackerel. And then after maybe like the third session, and then it came in, then it's like Iris would put a mark down. I'm like, what are you doing? You're not even paying attention. Because she'd be looking the other way and she put a mark down. Of course, it was that mark. That's what I said the other day. We were talking about this large painting. I said, it's hysterical. That large painting, actually, it was that mark that I found it was so reprehensible that you could have looked away and been nonchalant and just made and that's the mark actually that changed the whole course of the painting and moved it into what it was. And so, the deal is I saw, wow, okay, it's like, this is a mathematical interleave and a dance. And all we're doing is we're learning how to be 0 point with our own math, so that when we can effectively and harmonically interleave with everyone else's around us. And that's what's happening.
I hear this beautiful paradox place happening, because it's like the 0 point of reverence, of reverential action, of like, I'm going to put this mark here. And then the reverence of irreverence, or the reverence of playfulness, and like the perfectness of a kid just being like, I don't know, and or even what they would call mindlessness or unconscious. But it's like in certain framework, I think framework and containers, kind of, because someone could also commit murder and be unconscious of it. And that's a mindless action that might be just, fueled by this anger. But you're talking about actions coming from a beautiful, two modern artists, like obviously, at a level of well-being to be able to create, not just stabilize well-being, but like then amplify well-being in the creation. And then mindlessness there has a kind of, I talk about drunken boxing a lot as a very high form of art. It's not easy to choose to not be in control. You're controlling not being in control. It's a very paradoxical poetry. And some people need, medicines to stabilize that state. Some people, end up finding it with their own bioelectric signal and it becomes their, it becomes their 0 point. And I think this is where I think this is where greatness comes. I mean, obviously, but potentially other ways to talk about it. But I, growing up with under Ted, I'm like, what is he doing? And then I see people cry to him. I see, the crowd, and I'm watching, what's the difference between him and another person? Why is he so special? It brought me to tears yelling at him. I was like, you don't get it, man. I'm trying to get him to, like, you don't get it. You don't understand. You're not normal. And this was also part of my freeing of that latent energy, that dormant energy that I had suppressed, because it was freaking confusing. Third grade, a kid walks up to me, is like, hey, my dad gave this to me to give to you, and ask your dad if you can sign it. And I was like, oh, okay. And I go home, I'm like, hey dad, my friend wants his dad wants, can you sign this? I remember that was one of the strangest transactions of my childhood.
What did your dad say? That's the thing that I'd like to know.
He said, is he a friend? That's all he cared as his first thing. But I think he, at some point well, obviously at some point but
I love that. Is he a friend? Is it first impulse? Isn't that interesting? That's beautiful.
Yeah, because he knows there's value for sure. But who's asking this? Who is this? I think that was the imprint that was left on me. But I remember that being this transaction that it was one of those moments that I would say led to my awakening, which is like, well, who am I? What is me? What is the I? And then where does value come from? And what is it that doesn't want to create on their own, but just wants to be nearby something else that has embodied that? And we're kind of swirling around the idea of 0 point and embodied. This is also, I would call crystallinity. Someone's crystalline. You're an artist. You're Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan on the basketball court. It's living poetry. It's crystalline in that particular, maybe maybe they gamble and they're not emotionally intelligent with their fiance, whatever. But on the basketball court, there's this 0 point happening there. And then we're kind of talking about, well, that's that. But then, then what the hell is the rest of this? What is the rest of that stuff? And it got mentioned briefly. We kind of skimmed through it. But in this lower density, which I would give the word third density, in the lower section of third density, which is Manipura, yellow chakra, primary source of identification is being an individual body amongst the collective group of the people. And you're not someone that is in that bandwidth of consciousness, isn't super elevated into heart consciousness, which is Jesus's real guidance. And Jesus is trying to get everyone into heart consciousness, fourth ray, heart-centered. And so when you're in heart-centered consciousness, you can't not unify with anything. You become attentive to, you attend to it. But that lower bandwidth of third density, I think that was something I studied as a kid without knowing it. But I was confused as shit. What is happening? What is Ted doing that everyone finds so magical? So I'll give you the baton with this. At what point did you start in your journey noticing, maybe it popped for you? I'd like to hear how it happened. To whatever it gives you though, as a baton question. So many are in this, it's literally social competition for whose struggle is most difficult.
Yeah.
It's like a comparison, not for thriving. It's a comparison for whose struggle has been most hard.
Yeah, the hero. It's called the hero victim. Or
So
the
at what,
victim hero.
that's a great term. Was there a transition? And you mentioned spirit guides. I mean, I would love to hear your definition of spirit guides. And when did you have a transition where your younger years at any point vividly different into a new style of embodiment?
Um, no, not yes and no. I mean, the thing is I started meditating when I was 14. You know, we lived on a farm. We had animals. I had my own horse to ride out every day. So I was communing with it. I had a pet pig. I'd go and lie down with her and kiss her belly. She's 500 pounds, and she'd grunt. And you know, I mean, it was like, for me, it was all communion with nature. And I was doing transcendental meditation at 14. So twice a day. And so,
And how did that come to you? You had parents or friends or someone introduced you, or you
you know,
found it?
it was my cousin Jimmy K, who was just everybody's favorite. You know, he lived in Scarsdale. He had 6 kids in Scarsdale, New York. They were wealthy, you know, and they were so lawless. They were so lawless. And he was gorgeous. Everyone just loved him. He was 2 years older. He was physically fit. He was ripped. He was just lawless. I mean, he smiled at you, and you couldn't resist him. I mean, and whatever it was, let's do this. Let's turn this car over. It wasn't anything that would hurt anybody ultimately, but it would break patterns, you know. And so
A disruptor.
is disruptor. And so, you know, Jimmy got kicked out of pretty much every private academy they sent him to. And then I heard, he was 2 years older than me. I heard that Jimmy's doing transcendental meditation. I'm like, what? Really? And my mother's told me, and she said, you want to do it? She said, I'll do it with you. I'm like, sure, why not? And so we went, took the 4-day class with my grandmother, my dad's mother.
Wow.
And it was 4 days, you know, and it was really incredible. So just the education of the mind. And, you know, I'm listening, thinking, you know, and I was raised to be a skeptic of anything. Don't go along with anything that is not true. I mean, in first grade, I pledge allegiance to the flag. I just put my hand down very calmly. Don't make a stink about it. Just put your hand down. Pledge allegiance to a flag. And I heard everyone go, United States of America. And I thought, what? I'm 5 years old, you know. I thought, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever vibrationally. So I didn't cause a stink about it. Teacher said nothing, but I'm not going along with that one, you know. And because it was separate, you know. And I was taught, you know, antithetically to that. I mean, my parents are really, there's something, you know, they're very much like, you know, in a way like Ted and Shemaine's role with you, except my mother's like Barbara Stanwyck, you know, and she's a whole other, you know, the shotgun and the whole thing.
I don't know who Barbara Stanwyck is, but I can feel her.
She's a great, you know, tough, you know, she was the tough, you know, mother with a gun, you know, you know, and all the Westerns. And you know, we get exactly what we need. I think really the key is everything is functional Jesus, functional Krishna, functional Buddhist, functional everything. If it's not functional, it's just a word. It's like Freddie would say, listen, when people say I love you, it's nonsense 99% of the time, because what they want is they want I love you back. And that's one of the first things he said when I met him. It was like, I said, wow, this guy, I like this guy. It's like, no bullshit, you know. And he said, you know, just be very clear on it. He said, everything got all mixed up, you know, but don't accept things that aren't real on that level. I love you. You're getting that. You just say to them, you're saying that to elicit the same response back, you know.
It's a social belonging transactional exchange. It's not actually heart-based at all.
Exactly, which is what this is going on, which is what's going on now. One of the most important things that he's told me, Freddie, and was, he said, all that's happening, as I went back to him again, this is maybe like 4 years ago, I said, Freddie, I said, what's going on? What is really going on here in the consciousness? What's going on? He says, this is all that's going on. He says, right now, thought is coming from the head, and thought is moving down, and all thoughts will come out of the heart. Period. Nothing else. He said, it is moving down. There's nothing anyone can do to stop it. You can't control it. He said, this is what's happening. So each one of us are going, at this point, it's moving very fast, because what's happening is it's moving down to our heart. The resistance is so great with those who are in their mind that they are falling apart, literally. And so, the math of it is we create everything to happen. Nothing happens to us. Everything happens with us and for us. And so all this thing, Bill Gates is trying to kill us and Doc Fauci, and look, here's the proof. And like that. Well, we created Bill and we created Fauci. We created all this. It's like people smoking cigarettes going, he's trying to kill me.
Let's zoom into that. So, I mean, how does unity consciousness comprehend the whole COVID situation?
Okay, so you always pick up, my father would always say, bigger picture, bigger picture. Anytime I was concerned about anything, he said, bigger picture, there's a bigger picture, consider the source. And so if you go to the bigger picture of this, instead of vilifying anyone, you see, okay, here's a species, the humans, okay, idea. Here are the humans who have mostly lost their connection to spirit. This is the game. This is known. We're moving into a material. So that X amount will embody spirit while in form, and most will not. And no one stays anyway. This is just a train stop, essentially. This is one experience, the multiverse. That's the hardest thing for us to understand. And so what happens is when we get this out of hand, because the humans won't stop consuming. I mean, the minute you say, listen, there's glyphosate or this is that, or that's going to kill you, or this is going to do that, or you're putting stuff in your hair, and you still do it. I know, but I like the taste. It's only me. I'm just going to use this, a paper plate, so we'll throw it away. So the humans will not stop consuming. And because of the place we are in the story, the Earth will be suffocated. If the humans weren't depopulated, mostly depopulated, most of the humans, if most of them weren't gone, we wouldn't be here. Nothing would be here in a year. Nothing at all. Nothing would exist. Okay. And so there has to be those people who are seen as evil, who are impulse to go, we got to get rid of that. Get rid of me too. Get rid of all these people. We're going to be resurged anyway. I mean, this thing, in order to save this consciousness, in order to save this world idea. And so they have to, in their ego split mind, they have to believe it's up to them to take out as many people as possible. Now, it's still source guided, because 97% of the planet, and that's the number, 97% of the human population has got to go fast, just because of the way the Earth is moving, and you can see how quickly things regenerated. I mean, it's all a metaphor. Corona is the crown virus, the crown chakra, I mean, it's all created, viruses in our mind, I mean, all this is in our mind. And, I mean, once we move into a mind, we realize we can heal everything simultaneously. We still have to have it right now, the physical manifestation. Okay, we have robots. Oh my God, robots are taking over. Well, wait a minute. Isn't everyone become robots? You're not. Did you smell that flower? What flower? You just passed it. It's right next to you. Oh, I didn't say. Whoa, that was neat. Did you see that? You made that tree right there when you picked that fruit. What? Oh, how long has that been going in there? It's filled with. Oh my God, it's filled with fruit right in front of your house. Taste it. Whoa, can I eat it? Literally, I've had these conversations with people. Can I eat it? Yeah, taste it. Oh my God, you kidding me? Yeah, this is right in front of your house. That's how extreme it is,
Yeah.
And so because of that, you can see we've become robots. So we create robots to replace us, because we don't need to be here if we're not smelling the flowers. The robots are far more efficient. And they will ultimately, they're a manifestation of us. So, oh my God, the artificial reality is taking over. So interesting. I don't know if you saw the other day, Elon Musk was talking about his concern about what's happening with artificial intelligence. He's really concerned. Yeah. And you can see he's a little rattled now. He's staying calm, but he's rattled because he understands that it's Frankenstein essentially. And knowing that, wow, these artificial intelligence, these robots, literally they were programmed then to no longer listen to the programmer. That's how they were programmed. They were programming to take over idea. However, as the consciousness has created, we have created this, they will take over those who are not 100% prismatically themselves. Because if we're not 100% and we have to call Susan to corroborate the reality of this moment, then we will not be here in this reality. We'll move to another grid. That's all.
I've mentioned to you Ayn Rand and yes. her incredible mathematics in her term, the fountainhead. There are only so many fountainheads. And if you're talking about 97%, there's not many fountainheads who actually are a mouth of the river of source into this world, in this domain.
Yes.
So how many a percentage? It sounds like 97. Who knows? That's what Blade Runner is really about. You can't tell the replicants from the humans anymore.
Right.
Uh,
We can't now. We can't tell. You cannot tell. I mean, that's the idea. The COVID thing is very important because we needed something to reflect. Okay, what is going to reflect how afraid we are? Well, how many people put the masks on immediately? Okay, it's not anyone's fault. It's just, this is what, okay, know that you put the mask on immediately, even though you have the information, technical information to show that that mask does nothing at all. That's why you can cover it with a handkerchief or anything, as long as your face is covered. Idea is to see how far, and it was constructed by people who were involved in advertising and highly aware of the human kind of say matrix of how it functions with material, okay, and the fear of how it's a relationship, whatever. And so all this is manipulated by that aspect of ourselves, of those who have been created, to then use all that, okay, against us as we're using it against ourselves. You
yes.
cannot be hypnotized without your allowance.
Consent.
Consent, thank you.
What's the interleave in your framework between anti-Christ and anti-function?
Well, anti-anything is the same.
But saying, okay, if we're our soul self, and then anything should be functional if we're going to use it. But then like the mask and like, okay, COVID shows up really as a mirror of how ignorant and disconnected everybody is anyway. So it's like,
exactly.
Okay, here's an excuse to just be ridiculously incoherent with what actually makes sense. Yeah, but you put it on. Okay, but yeah, then once you get to your table, you take it off. Okay, but yeah, but then if you have the shot, but then you might infect, but then if you have the boost and then, but you still might give, and it's like, okay,
mind.
It's a perfect mirror for how insane everything's already gotten anyway.
Exactly.
So the Christ, the Krishna, the crystal prism, soul, self, effulgence, and emanation of the divine infinite is in perfect coherence with reality because it's functional.
Yes.
The table's a good table because I put stuff on it. I'm a person and I'm living my life. And if Ted loves to talk about, he's like, oh man, I'm forgetting the exact way he describes it, but he's like, people want to complain about it. It's like, I don't know, every time I do this, my gums are just bleeding. And he's like, well, yeah, maybe because it's a glass sandwich. Maybe stop eating the glass sandwich. I don't know why my gums are bleeding. But so okay, and then Ted maybe not as like esoteric and yogic in the framework as occult terms and stuff like that as you and I maybe, but he hates non-functional stuff. He's like a button on the computer. He's like, what is this? I didn't tell, he's serious. I didn't say that. He erupts at like non-function. Dysfunction is just incoherent in his system.
Right. No,
he wants to move his fingers and play this note. Boom. He wants the truck to do this. Boom. The gun should fire when I pull the trigger. If it doesn't, something's broken. Let's fix it. Great. Now I can go to sleep. Next day, improve my scenario again. Next day, improve my scenario again. To me, that's what I've seen as, look, Ted's probably not going to call it Christ consciousness, but it's functional consciousness.
Yes.
So the question is a reframe again as a catapult. Well, then what the hell is the rest of this? It's anti-function. It's like we have turned into, quite literally, it's the gold calf, Moses, the whole story. It's like, where we come down and we look at this collective, and most are worshiping dysfunction.
Yeah.
And it's social belonging that's part of the momentum into it for them, but it's also running away from what's actually part of their growth, because even in their nearby social scenarios and family scenarios, growth is actually tacky. Growth is, you're changing. You're not like who you used to be.
Yeah. That's so funny, isn't it? That's an hysterical, talk about a billboard. You just put these billboards everywhere just to flip the mind, because it's nobody's fault. That's the deal. This is nobody's fault. It's a program. We were shown, okay, here's the deal. The important thing to understand is what happens here. What happens here affects where we go. Okay. And so, because the holographic, which is basically us without the particles, that we're always magnetizing and demagnetizing particles. we're never the same anyway. And so we just, when we leave this matrix, we just demagnetize the particles. Nothing, our energy, our thought, we just stay completely clear. We don't have to worry about anything. Now we can help because we had an experience in this physical reality. So now, like my brother Jeff Klein, who was just an incredible, human in his body.
One of your primary spirit guides.
Yeah. And, we're like twin energies. We actually were 2 years apart, but we looked, sometimes I look at him, I go, is that me? And he'd do the same thing. And it was funny because growing up, people would go, when we were in high school, my friends would go up to him and say, hey, Jim, then talk to him. And his friends would come to me, hey, Jeff, by the way, da, da, da. And I'm thinking, what, do we look that much alike? And we'd see each other. And over the years, we'd say, does this still happen to you? He goes, yeah. I said, we introduce ourselves. I go, hi, I'm Jim. And they go, Jeff, nice to meet you. I go, no, Jim. And they do the same thing with him. He'd say, I'm Jeff. And they go, Jim, nice to meet you. Never knowing that they had a brother named Jim or Jeff. It was so interesting. So when he left his body, and, understand he was at the top idea of the physical reality in I'd say the role of bridging spirit into consciousness and physical reality. He was at the forefront of capital consciousness, what's it called?
Like entrepreneurial conscious capital, capitalism, new kind of, yeah.
Yeah, he wrote a book called Working for Good. It was one of the first.
And he did a TED Talk.
Yeah, he did a TED Talk. Jeff Klein, Conscious Capitalism. That's what it is. And he's brilliant, and he's a beautiful being, and he's just an incredible brother. And the thing is that was my biggest lesson, because when I got the call, and I was impulsed to call, and at a very specific time and place, and I made the call, and it was actually Iris and Janet, my mother-in-law, were in the car, and Janet's on the phone going, she said, I have to tell you. And then she says, Jeff's dead. As she's saying Jeff's dead, all I'm hearing is chalk, chalk. I'm like, what? And she goes, chalk, chalk. I'm going, chalk, chalk. And I hear Iris in the background, but she said, chalk, chalk. That's all I could hear. I'm like, I can't 7 times. And finally I said, you have to spell it. And she says, your brother Jeff is, and as she says, dead. He's in my other ear going, not a tear, brother. I'm right here and going, holy shit. So I'm hearing, your brother Jeff is dead, and he's in my ear going, not a tear, brother. I'm going, oh my God. I mean, that's what his whole life work was about, and he knew that he could leave because there would be no break. And literally, it was the first time that occurred. As most of my, relationships, I would say, are out of body, and very functional. It's not like, oh, it's functional. It's like, okay, this is there, that's there. Here's the food, there's the people. That's what Jesus is about. And so Jeff explained to me right away. He said, listen, I'm in the holographic. Here's how it works. He said, first of all, death is a crock of shit. He said, there's no reality in any of it all. He said, it's just an ego construct. He said, you just move into the holographic. There's no break whatsoever. If you do the work, but you got to do the work here. Otherwise, you go into some other matrix. We don't need to talk about that, because it's a different matrix. You want to go to the holographic. And that's the idea, is you embody Christ consciousness. It doesn't matter that you're necessarily aware of it, because there are many, and most people do just all they think about is, how can I help this one? How can I bring this one? How can I do that one? I want to have that. And it doesn't matter whether they're aware of it.
Like Iris's stroke on the page.
Exactly. And Iris marvels at my connection. It's challenging. It's challenging for everybody. It's challenging for my family. It's challenging for everyone, because it's zero for me. It just is what it is. Why would you do anything that degrades you, that degrades the environment, or degrades the world? Why would you do anything by choice? I can't even comprehend it. I never could. And so, but I understand now is that in duality, we're fed a program that is so comprehensive and concretized for us to destroy ourselves first, meaning separate from spirit, and then destroy everyone else around, get everyone else to go along with it. And the trick of it is is a lot of the light beings, because we're all light beings, we're all come from light, you know, a lot of the very expanded light beings, the ones who are designated leaders, are actually the most dualistic. And that's the trick. So they're killing up to just the end, which is what's coming now. And there are a lot of them who are the worst killers and the most cutthroat. I mean, and this is coming to an end. And in the last minute, just before, they're going to get Christ consciousness, Krishna consciousness. They're going to go, holy shit, whatever this, that's none of that's real. I love everybody. What am I doing? Flip. And they'll be as fierce because everyone's killing something. There's nobody in duality that's not killing something. I'm not killing anything, really. We go to every moment. We're killing microbes. We're killing everything, unconscious. The things we're stepping on. The way we're killing ourselves and our pets with it. Well, what cleaning product are you using? Well, that. But that literally give the chemical makedown is killing your dog. Okay, you're taking 10 years off your dog's life. This dog could live to 40. And so, oh my God, my dog. Well, instead of crying about it, that's non-functional. Regret, all that emotional stuff. And that's the point of stoicism, is to be functional. It's not about non-feeling, because then the ego turns stoicism into non-feeling. I'm not going to feel anything. I'm going to be stoic. So the ego.
I look at stoicism as positive gray, whereas like humdrum is negative gray. So yeah. Stoicism is like integrated the gray area between the polarities, and for the insight that by restricting the movement between those polarizations and potentials, it actually compresses energy. So stoic people are sometimes very intense people. I see that from Ted sometimes, and he's far from stoic mainly, but someone like Jordan Peterson is often talking about stoicism as very functional. It's like it's a centeredness. Yes.
And a lot of the kids who are like maybe 20, around that age now, 19 to 20, who come in, they've got a different matrix. There's maybe crystal, I don't know, they call it, there's always a different word for every group who comes in. But they're they're often perceived as autistic or spectrum or whatever, and they don't have a lot of emotion in their voice, and they're very analytical and mathematical, and they're fun, because they're zero calibrators. And so they're just not going, oh my God, there's a tree. Oh my God, oh, that hurts. They're not responding in that way. They won't do it. They weren't, because they weren't given that. They weren't given that in their math to have any of that additive or subtractive vernacular.
Yeah, Asperger's and autism for me are both reflections of misunderstood evolutions in the Christos, which Christ is the soul body, and it therefore is going to evolve anthropologically and sociologically as new adaptations of how consciousness shows up as people. Yeah. And well, then what's all this autism in the past 100 years? How do these quote unquote handicaps fit into the framework of, but we're inevitably evolving always, right? Well then what's all this hyperactive? Well, what if they're properly active and the rest of it is actually improperly active? And so they're here as this energetic charge to kind of help stimulate an environment that otherwise is sleepwalking. Exactly. I see this, I think I've told you about it. It's this hilarious DMT like, pinpoint sticky note on my third eye for this lifetime. I don't think there's anybody who's researched TED as much as I have. And there's this Rolling Stone cover, he's on it. And it's this weird, Saturn, the world of the matrix, Maya, takes Christ as a fully embodied soul self and sometimes sexualizes it and makes it not the word's not disturbed, not perturbed, but there's a word. It means like make younger but weird. Like it's like these
that's an M. So him on the cross have a sexy guy, mostly naked, with nails through his hand.
Right. So it's like these faces, like and it's like on models and like all this pop culture. It's like something's hurting, but it's also slightly weirdly sexual. It's like, what is these faces? Who's in charge of like the choreography? Who's designing these faces? But so Ted's on the cover of Rolling Stone, is like the 80s, 70s, I don't know, and he's holding a revolver, no shirt on, you can't tell if he's naked or whatever. And the biggest word other than, you know, Rolling Stone is the main title. I think, you know, Ted Nugent, main story is the cover. You know, they've got the other little paragraphs about other main stories in the catalog, in the issue. Then the biggest other word is autism and art, blah, 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 blah. And I thought that was just like, it was like spirit just flicking me and saying, connect these dots.
Yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
and I've been looking at that, and I mean, Bell and I were just up there, and I mean, he's the highest functioning person I've ever been around consistently.
Yeah.
And if it's not high functioning, it is just incoherent in his field. And it deserves, you know, some type of alchemy. And then it does get that. And he shifts it. He shifts things into a different matrix pretty quickly, and pretty much usually without any kind of extra noise. Sometimes there's extra noise, and then he sometimes turns that into poetry, which for him is like loud distortion, like volcanic bubbles and stuff. But there's a moment, there's two moments that you've told me about your matrix definitely getting shifted into, I call it a timeline, but I also call it a bandwidth. One is you running through the field and the whole thing with like Jesus and like Bethlehem, like the whole that whole wild thing, and it's like the sunrise is coming up and you're just like, whoa,
Yeah.
that. And then your experience of waking up in the hospital with like you know, Hare Krishna, but like no memory.
Yeah,
And
I'm going to share that one because I think that's the deal. Okay, so in 2010, what year was it that those kids, what are they, the royal family kids, where they got married, and bin Laden was killed, like 2010, I think it was 2010. Or I came back in 2010, 2012. I came back I was in New York for 2 years. I broken my back. I was flatbedded to New York, my family's farm, and I was in Manhattan, and by design, you know, I was, quote, put on the street. He's a failure. He's got a broken back. He can't do anything now. And
meaning family rejects incorporating, and you're on your own again.
Yeah, exactly. So
and you're living you're homeless basically
in the middle of Manhattan in the winter. Okay, was put on the street. You know, healing from a broken back, which was, I didn't have any malice towards them then. I thought, this is great. Because who cares? I mean, the deal is we're spirit guided. It's like, what? This is my house. This is my bed. This is all that identification pattern that stops us from having experience. I thought, okay, whatever. It's just another experience. And I was always guided into just the most magnificent, you know, experiences. And then I ended up, I really couldn't lie down or sit for very long at all for like 2 years because of my spine injury. And so I walked the streets of Manhattan at night and the day, and it was great. You know, people were asleep all night. And so I got to really experience a lot of energies. And when I came back here, let's see, it was then 2012, I mean, to make a long story short, because I'm actually going to be going into this, and maybe we'll be doing it together, but more extensively, because it was the start of a whole journey. I was found on the beach, face down at sunrise, with Tibetan clothes, you know, all these, with an ambiguous Buddha and an amulet and a star ruby carved in a Merkaba, and all these. But no identification, nothing. And then a bag with a pair of rollerblades and a lomi stick from Hawaii. Okay, and that's it. Okay, with my tattoos, you know, on my wrist, which are one of the crescent moon and the seed of life, and that's the only identification that I had. And so I was found face down in a comatose state, apparently, taken to UCLA Medical by paramedics on 15th Street, where I was for a week. And when I came to,
you were in a coma.
Well, whatever, a comatose state. So yeah, I was in a coma. You know, okay, they say comatose state, whatever that means. Coma. Yeah, I was in a coma. Anyway, It doesn't mean anything. It's just how we call whatever altered
Yeah.
state. You know, it's like someone's you're going to meditation, sit in a corner, and they call the fire department. Believe me, I've had it happen to me. And so on Brentwood, right? Yeah. And so I was in full Lotus and a Fred Siegel shirt on. Called the fire department. 5 men in fire coming running up. You kidding me? And they look at me and go, "You're meditating?" I go, "Right." And they're like, "Oh, geez." So anyway, so I'm used to I'm used to the reaction that people have towards stillness, towards intimacy. And so my hand had to be forced in terms of any identification pattern or a job that I had to do, my mission in life and all that kind of stuff. I had to be stripped of it. And so all my memory was taken. But what happened is when I opened my eyes and they're all there's classic, the doctors all around me, like looking at me, going, "Hello." And I go, "Hello." They said, "Well, do you know where you are?" I said, "Well, I know I'm in a hospital. I'm in Rockville." Oh. And how did you get in? Okay. Anyway, excuse me. So anyway, they said, "Do you know where you are?" I had no memory. All I saw was blank. You know where the president is? No. Do you know any of that stuff? I didn't any of it. And they saw I wasn't kidding them. I really didn't. I just
didn't know your name. Didn't know.
No. So I would just see blank anytime they asked me to go. I said, "Just see white," And they said, "What do you remember?" I said, "Oh, what do I remember? I remember the sound of the ocean. I remember looking up at the night sky and seeing full of stars. And I remember looking at the moon, and the moon was the same as the crescent moon. I looked down. I remember looked up again, and then all of a sudden I looked over at Polaris, and then Polaris got huge and brighter and brighter and brighter. I was like, whoa! And then whoom, I was in another density. I had never had that experience except when I was meditating as a kid. The TM brought me into that place where complete awareness, but not any body awareness. And I felt a stream going in the top of my head and a stream going out the side. The stream going out the side of my head was all my identification, who I was, anything like that. And I was going, I felt, "Oh my God." And I heard a voice say that you do not need this. That's your memory. You do not need this at this time. And the top of my head was coming math, just math, equations and Merkabas, and it was in a grid of kind of like green LED, feel like a constellation. And it was bathing my brain literally. And it said, "This is the math that's going to be assistive for this, to adjudicate the math on this planet at this time." I'm like, okay, well, I can handle that. That's great, and that's what we're here for. We're here to assist, however.
So you told a version of that to the doctors.
I told them this and they were like, wow. Now, the funny thing is that I was there for a week. Okay. I had no ID, no money, no nothing. Okay. The cops came from the head of the police department. They fingerprint me. I can't find me. I have nothing, no memory, no record of me anywhere, nothing. So I don't exist. Okay. And they were putting people out, who were, "Oh, I'm just about dead," putting them out. And they kept me there for a week. They were so fascinated. I'm sitting in full lotus going, what am I doing here? The sound, the noise. And I actually watched television to kind of re-educate myself on where I am. And I couldn't even believe it. I couldn't believe the way people were talking. I couldn't believe the snippiness, the sexual games, all this face making. It was like a world of face making. What's going on here? And I see Bin Laden, they killed him, and Obama comes on going, "So there's nothing that we Americans can't do when we put our what do you say, to our shoulder to the grindstone." I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Who is this guy? I can't even believe this. You just killed somebody. What do you, that's your accomplishment? See, we can do anything. You know what I mean? It's like all of that. I thought, wow, they've completely gone mad. And it just gave me the inkling, an understanding, and a line of demarcation that I could not go back in terms of integration, And the next morning, I rollerbladed up to what was then the Rose Temple, which was the Krishna Temple in Venice Beach. And I looked up thought, there's Radha Krishna. I said, that rings a bell. And I hear a voice saying, welcome, time traveler. And one of the guys in there, David Kanandana, who you'll meet, you'll actually probably interview him. He's a genius. He's at the forefront of it. He's like Charlie Bukowski of Krishna consciousness. He's the real deal. And he welcomed me in. He said, would you come in? I said, would you like some breakfast? Welcome, time traveler. And it was the first inclination. I thought, okay, well, I know, okay, then I'm a time traveler, which of course I understand what that means now. I didn't understand it then. So, and we're all from somewhere.
Also in the, at least one adaptation of that account, I heard you say one time, in the hospital room, didn't you have insight as to certain, like the nurse, something was happening with her, you could feel, you didn't know things about yourself, but you knew things about these people that you were nearby. You think
I mean, everything that came through, everything that came through, whether it was my blood pulse, wherever it was, I would just give her the number, and take her 5 minutes, to hook it all up. And anything it was, and people would come in. I have information for them, and it was funny because there was one fellow there who was out to get me. He was like, I know who you are. One night came in at 4 a.m. and shined a flashlight. I mean, I know who you are. I'm like, he's okay. Tell me about myself. He said, tell me that. And I go, and I remember saying, I don't do parlor tricks. What? And he flashes off and he goes out. Well, and the last day he was my nurse. I'm thinking, oh God, I thought I saw his name up on the board, and I thought, I'm in trouble now. What's good? He was such a, just terror. And he came to the bottom of the bed. And I thought, okay, look at him. I just see his shape and everything. And he says, okay, tell me about myself. And something came out about his spine and his issues with it and what he could do to assist. And I could tell you, he had to stop from crying, and I had to actually emotionally think about seeing his face, it was like realizing that I had no motive. I don't know. I had no ulterior motive, I'm not, that's the thing in duality. It's like, we're always seen as like anybody who is kind of inured to just Christ consciousness to do only assist everything is seen as ulterior motives, which that's what it's supposed to be. So it gives us the challenge of then just staying in that. There's nothing else we can do, and it's a challenge for everybody. Everybody's a similar challenge.
It's like the transition away from the world that's gross and physical, and I think that's a funny etymological slip of the English language too. Gross manifestation. It's also, ew, it's gross, but it's gross means like manifested tangibly in the physical density. But when we transition, I do see it as a vertical transition. We're seeing now what was there. I remember this happening in one of my first bubble pops was when I first started working with ganja, and I didn't want to be around other people. I just wanted to write, and I just wanted to journal. And I saw this diagram of being in a field with like waist high grass, and I couldn't see things in the field, but I saw there was something up ahead of me, but I couldn't move. But then I turned around and there was this big ladder up to this platform, and I could walk up that easy. And it was like showing me this metaphor of how consciousness worked, where I was in the field and I couldn't see what else was in the field. But when I took, the first flight up, I could see a little bit better, but I still couldn't see over there. I couldn't see the geometry in the field. And then when I walk, I was at 40 feet up, then I could see the actual shape that I was in. It was like a crop circle. It was a geometry, but it was like this, one of my integration moments was like, there is geometry that we're inside of that we can't see from the vantage point of when we identify as the physical density of the body. Yeah. But as we get more nuanced, that is the initiation process. That is, and everybody, that's why it's one of my passions, as you know, is like to hear about how the light took someone home. I've heard it called the reclamation. How were you reclaimed? Which, now in this modern lexicon, there's talk about repurposing and upcycling, and it's a repurposed 2x4, and now it's a art piece. It's like, that's the same thing that spirit does with all of us, is that the integration process is really the disintegration process. The disintegration of the ego is the integration into spirit. The more and more we get integrated into that, which I love that word also, into, and then great. And great is like, a gate with with a radiance in it, but also great is something you grate cheese with. So it refines and it breaks something down and it slivers it, it disassembles it. But then also great literally means greatness, epicness, awesomeness. So integration, I think, is a very interesting word, of the ions, integration, ions of it.
Actually, etymologically, it would, now you say that, you could see that all those other things are fun and all related. It seems like the integration is the gratitude. It's once we enter gratitude, then we are integrated. So that's what actually that probably comes from, once we're in a state of grace.
Love that. And the more and more we get disassembled from that ego pain body identification mapping system, it takes on that gracefulness, and you can't help it.
And right now we're at the most challenging for everybody. There's nobody on this planet that is not challenged to the point that they have never been challenged before in our minds. Because it's almost, first of all, it's almost impossible for men and women to be in the same, share the same space now. Men and men are, can only share, and women can only share really true space through intimate communication with the breath. The breath is key. The breath is the key to zero all the math. All that concretized shape falls apart with the breath, but it has to be very specific. And it's that 3-cycle breath of inhaling through the nose, with the eyes closed, holding that breath and holding that space, and then exhaling through the mouth and holding that space out. And you repeat that 3 times with the eyes closed. And it puts you into that singular state of consciousness, because you can't remember with your eyes closed. You can't even describe the room you're in. Can't even describe what you look like. And that's the key. And it's that simple. And, that's the fun thing about the consciousness is that, Jesus is simple, Jesus is not complicated. It's like, there's the food, there's the people. There's nothing to think about. It's like everything and everyone complicated everything. The Buddhists complicated it with compassion. What the hell is compassion? There's love and there's action. What is compassion? Compassion actually lies in the same plane as sympathy, because you're making a judgment. Those people need my compassion. It's also tricky, and the thing is, the high level, whatever that in itself, in itself is a paradox. It's like, and I remember, Freddie was a good friend to the Dalai Lama. And I remember one year he called me up and was talking about his high holiness. I said, what are you talking about, his high holiness? His name is Tenzin. I said, and what is all this stuff? I said, he said, he's your friend. He spent a month with Freddie on his ranch up in Malibu years ago. And I said, what is that? I said, you're just perpetuating a lot of nonsense. I said, first of all, his high holiness, his possessive male pronoun, high creates hierarchy. Holiness, if he's holy, everything else is holy. I said, so no wonder the Chinese come up and rip the Buddhists off the top. There it goes. I said, tell him. He says, you tell him. You'll tell him. I said, that's fine. I don't care who tells him. It doesn't make any difference. It's not his fault. It's a program. But understand is that everyone got programmed. He had to. The Dalai Lama had to play that part because he was still in duality. He's eating meat, because he's, he likes the taste, whatever. All this. He has to show that he's a human in duality. It's not his fault. But that's a program. Everyone has to have the program. Listen, we all get pissed about things like that. Well, there you go. Now you stepped out of Christ consciousness. Yes, every single one of us by design. So we have empathy for everyone else, how this is a really challenging matrix. It is like the place where all of the multiverse, they go, oh, geez, did you do Earth? Yeah. How many tours? It's the same thing. I had 900 lives. Holy shit, you're kidding me. How is that? Well, I mean, it all ends up great, of course, but wow. Oh man. Of course, all you remember is the good times, and you laugh about all that stuff. You laugh about you cut his head off, I cut my head off, because we're not even in our bodies. And we're just coming out of this matrix now. That's what's happening. And so it's fighting tooth and nail to destroy itself, because that's what its role is. Here's paradise.
Can we briefly put a lens on, so we are transitioning out of an old paradigm that has old framework, that is an old system. It's like an old iOS update. The update is happening. Call it Aquarius, call it end of this yuga, whatever, but it's definitely happening. One of the ways, and we mentioned it briefly last night when we spoke, one of the ways that that's happening in the more dense aspects of reality is this hyper identification with non-binary gender identification. What is the math that you see in that world? Because it's obviously kind of you could say that there's a positive and a negative to it with all things, but where would you say are the trickiest places to keep a mind of the things that where folks might be getting caught in and how can it be simplified and navigated?
Very easily is that it has nothing to do with gender. There are two genders in this sphere. There's the male gender and there's the female gender. That's all. There's the male and the female aspect. What happened is because the archetypes became so whacked out. We got Rock Hudson and Doris Day. Okay. And so, and they both he's got boys on the side, she's got girls on the side, which is fine, but they're pretending something else. And so the archetypes, and there's John Wayne, okay, be like John Wayne, there's Clint Eastwood shooting, and go ahead, make my day, which we love him. We love that archetype. We all had to go through it. We all have to go through it. And then we realize it's inauthentic because it's not intimate. And all this is about is intimacy. And so what happens is when we're not intimate, then they borrow all this stuff and call themselves anything, call myself this, call myself that. And that's all it's about. And so all it is an intimate connection again. That's what Iris does. She teaches the class to get people intimate, because the bottom line is, and people have experiences and they go, oh my God, like how in 7 minutes, their life has changed. They've never had an experience of intimacy before, and now they have an experience of intimacy. Well, it took 7 minutes, and so, to me, that's one way there you want to do it. There are ways, that's one way of getting to it. But if you don't have intimate connection, you have nothing with anything.
Seeing beyond the physical identity labels, not getting stuck in the hyper emphasis of their importance.
Right. Because all it's doing is using it. Oh, now, I love your hair. Oh, you're so beautiful. He's a boy. Okay. My God, now he's got hair that comes down to here. And so his friends go, wow, your hair is great. You look pretty. I love your boots. It's no different from doing that with anything else. It's just another physical, it's a way to avoid intimacy.
It's like an accessory. It's like brings the attention to like, oh, nice earrings. Well, you're only wearing the earrings because it's an expression of beauty and the face and bringing your attention. And it's all, it's like this magnetics towards love, but it gets stuck in these kind of gradients along the way.
Yeah, there's just ego labyrinths. I'm a boy who identifies being a girl who likes boys, and all of it nonsense. It's all just nonsense in the mind. It has nothing to do with this is what I'm attracted to. It's just embarrassment. The humans are just generally embarrassed by everything.
You've said that very distilled, and that really has distilled it in my own framework as well, as like, if you just uncomplicated it and got right to the root of it, is that this boy is attracted to boys or attracted to girls in this way, that he wants to be coming to them from the perspective of a girl. But because society says, no, then the ego has to put all these makeup on, has to put all these shapes on top of itself to avoid the embarrassment and gain some kind of permission to do that.
Exactly. And then so becomes movements, there's a movement for gender movement, so that everyone, just like the masks, okay, now we're all together, because all people want to do is they want to just feel together. And it's like, anything else doesn't matter where it is. It's like people just want to feel together. How else could you convince people to put on an outfit, pick up a gun, go to some other country and shoot people? I mean, because someone said, hey, they're bad. You go shoot
Wait.
them. You know what I mean? It's like they just want to belong to something.
Oh man, I wish I had a better camera. But as you said, shoot something. I promise to God that Ted literally just stepped out there and he has a shotgun and he just shot, I mean
Yeah,
shot something.
I see, I see him out
You
there.
said you said shoot something and Ted
Hey, we're
Malachi's
all working together. It's one mind.
we're in tandem for sure.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Malachi so desperately wants to. It's very interesting. Oh, it was a squirrel, I suppose. Um, yeah, it's like it evokes the Malachite's like most primal aspects.
Yeah, sure. Now, so he's shooting the squirrel because,
From what I've heard him talk about it as, there's too many of them, and they're like a rodent, and yeah, they're cute, but I guess the simple way to say it is that there's too many of them, and he's
right,
balancing the
right,
geography.
right. I mean, that's his mind is pure math. And when he takes animals out of their physical form, it's because they're imbalanced. And all that imbalance, by the way, is reflection of what we've created because of the ecosystems that we've created. Because without us, everything is in perfect balance. There's no imbalance. And so that's what we're moving into. We're actually moving into the perfect balance. And in the perfect balance, that's why most people are leaving, because they just can't, they don't want to do the work. They're not going to do the work. They don't want to be functional, you know? They want to be, they bought the story of we're going to be rich and famous and sit and everyone's going to serve us. And that's this part of the material game. They go to a different grid. They go to a different matrix. That's all. And they learn. They learn. It's like they learn all the ways that they were given. That's what happens is if we don't get it now, there's nothing ever lost, we just go to a different grid where we're actually going through all the things and that we were given by everyone, the trees, the oxygen, everything. So we actually learn to be in a state of bliss. It's out of body, but it's like, wow. And we're shown, it's like a school. We're educated then. Our energy fields are educated on how deeply we were loved in every moment. And then how we withheld love, which contracted us. And so then what happens is then with that information bank, and it's a very fast download, all that stuff, it's just, we see it and then we go, whoa, it's a flash. It's just a flash. But what happens is we go into the universe seeing that and going, whoa, thank you. Okay, because we're out of body, so we don't have any interference. And that's what we go back into the universe with. So all the love is shown to us, but we could have experienced it here. We could have actually felt the love here, and we could have then reciprocated and been loving beings. But we thought we weren't being loved, so we're not loving anyone. That's part of duality. And listen, it's understandable, and everyone's position is understandable. It's a really challenging matrix for any spirit, the strongest of spirits, And then the idea is, well, great, look at their enlightened being, they got shot. Well, they got shot. They got basically taken out of their form and put in another form in a very easy way for them. They don't feel anything. It's like, oh, good. They didn't have to get sick physically, nothing. They just got shot and leave. It was for everybody else's lesson because you weren't ready to have this person there. So it seems so sharp and abrupt. Oh my God, they got taken out and they were so good. Well, for them, it's easy. They were taken out. That was their gift. They could just take and move to another matrix where the holographic usually, where they can be ultimate assistance to so many, which is all we want to do anyway, because that's what's fun. That's the once people realize it's fun assisting her. It's fun. There's nothing more fun than feeding people, than assisting people. What is more fun? I mean, what did we come here for? That's what we came here for. We came here to feed each other, to learn each other's languages, to sing with each other, to create with one another, to find out about each other, to dance in the landscape of each other's minds, because God knows, I mean, the minds are just incredible. The minds are as exciting, but we've dumbed down to the point of incomprehensibility and now complete non-functionality. And that's why this is occurring. So if, you can see if it's nobody's fault, but if you buy a story idea of your own, purposeful, murder, it's a murder. There's no such thing as a murder or a suicide. It's all the same thing. It's all an agreement on some level. It's hard to understand that when you're in your body. Someone killed my, this, but it's on a spiritual level. to have certain things energetically happen. So certain mathematical sequences must occur. And this is the only way it could happen here. It's for us ultimately to feel and experience more love. Because I didn't know I loved that person until they were shot. Now I really, that happens is the ego comes in and go, miss them. Instead of missing them, we go, no, don't miss them, love them and feel them right now. Because there's no reality in missing. Because once again, you're missing their energy field. That's what this is about. We're missing. And it got so sentimental. I miss you. I miss you. It's so the whiny bunch of whine of the humans. It's like the multiverse can't bear it anymore with all the animals screaming and tortured and all the people whining. It's terrible. What a noisy planet, I mean, that's the reality of it. It's like the show's not interesting anymore. The universe, the multiverse, they don't want to hear this anymore. This is a drag, This place is supposed to be a harmonic frequency, not horns and things backing up and people screaming and guns and just nonsense.
We've heard this record before.
Yeah, exactly. So even talking about it is like, it's nothing, I mean, it's just, it's not interesting. That's the idea. It's not interesting.
What are you, I think maybe on the way out here, on maybe the next couple moments will be our outro. What's really lighting you up these days? What are you moving into in it with joy? What is interesting you?
That's a good question, because all my mind matrix sees all the time is the possibility of creation and everything all the time. And this is the most challenging time because the blanket is so heavy and purposeful to dampen all of us, so that we really have to rise up from the ashes of anything that's left of what we thought we were, in order for spirit to embody and imbue our form, so that when we embark on this now voyage, we're everything we are. There's no diminishment in our math. That's what's happening. So it's it's just challenging for everybody, I mean, I see and I'm shown all the time because, that's my character's job is to get the jump ahead so I can assist with the jump heads. The challenge of that is integrating the jump aheads. Now I understand it's not up to me. I just can do what I'm doing, even though what I'm doing is maybe perceived as ridiculous and not taking care of business, whatever like that. No, it actually is precisely taking care of what needs to be done for whatever image that needs to be presented and coming up. And it may not be understood, but it's source guided, and and spirit always leaves pieces out, so that anybody else will play devil's advocate, going, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? And for everyone has to experience the same kind of challenge of that aspect. And so just holding on to nothing, and keeping the body in shape, and doing a lot of breathing and communing with nature and the animals. And that's all you can do right now. You have to commune with nature. You have to. The only way we can stay sane, it's in the stars. Look at the stars at night, and be out at the sunrise, and look at that sun as it's coming up, and do the breaths with the sun, and all of that's the only way that we can recalibrate into reality. There are too many diverse narratives that are all fighting to be the sole narrative of this time, because that's what the ego does. Destroy everyone else's story but yours. Yours is the only one that's really real. Everyone else is part of your story. And wow. So the ego is basically kicking the ass of humanity that has allowed it to, wait a minute, let me help you off the bed. I helped the dog off the bed. 1 second.
There you go, right there. Assisting right there.
She's an old girl. She's so cute. And yeah, so that's all we can do is no. All we can do is no, on a deeper level, because you can see the variants of reality that are occurring simultaneously under one roof now. It's incomprehensible. How can these three, how could all these different realities, completely different realities, exist in the same time sequence? And that's the trick. And so we're in store for some very large land shifts, massive land shifts. So that's what has to happen, because the physical reality must change now, so that people go, whoa, this really is changing. Because as long as everything is still where it was, the mind will always concretize and move in back to that safe of perceived safety, which is the most dangerous place you could be.
Sounds about right.
And if I haven't told you recently, I love you.
I love you
I
too.
sure do love you. Thank you. It's really nice to see you. It's nice, always nice to have these conversations with you, because the mathematical interleaving is an agreement that we've made on a level that is non-physical, in order at this time to commune and to assist with the integration of spirit and form. That's all we're doing. And your articulation and your understanding of kind of, it's like I look at you like, and it was Iris in a way, you've done that work. It's like you've actually read, you've done all the exploration with all these things. So where my memory is just constantly being wiped. So I have to be completely present, so it's a new exploration. The intellect stays intact, but the memory doesn't need to be there, because it's all in the moment. So, what I'm saying is thank you for doing the work, and yeah, thank you. And this is good.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you making the space and making the time, and also appreciate you following that guidance always in all the ways that you do, but especially turning your phone off. I think that's a beautiful way of creating space and allowing that telepathic crystallinity to just relax as much as it can in a wild, electromagnetic frequency mosh pit of a universe that this world is at this point. So thank you for making the time to interface with me in this technology. I think the next step for me, in a very blissful compass palette guided way, is would love to have a conversation with you and Ted. I think there'd be some really fun kind of, there's many moments where I'm like, I'm seeing him seeing it, and I can just feel spirit's quantum tilting of my mirror for his. So I'm like, yeah, this is it. And then he's like, oh, sure, whatever. But it's the same thing from these different angles. I think the three of us would be able to point at some very, very interesting things, especially with music. And I know there's a lot of framework that you and I have talked about for a while now that would be just fascinating to bring him in on. So we'll do that next.
Well, the beautiful thing about all this is that we're impulsed these equations, and then we have to let go completely of our agenda of time, because we see the assistance of it, and then we go, this is already written, everything. I mean, we're just characters in this play. Whoever's going to be in, the Dalai Lama doesn't matter. He'll be, he'll be at the grocery store when you go there if you have to see him. I mean, that's the spirit playing with us. There's no hierarchy in any of it. It doesn't matter whenever we need to be together to bring more God into the world, so to speak, to bring spirit into our material world. Especially now, it's moving very quickly. So we're all being brought together to assist everybody. Everybody's in duality. It's nobody's fault. What anybody's doing is not their fault. It's a program. And now it's a choice. And once we see it, that's what Milarepa is for. He's a cutthroat, and then he became a second Buddha. Is that no matter what we do, and we can always move into the light once we have that consciousness. And that's what this is about.
To me, that's what this podcast is about. Fully reflective, moving into that more and more. We reflect that fullness, the more and more we are it and become it, embody it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I like that. It's perfect, apt, fully reflective, beautiful.
Thank you, brother.
Love you, Baba.
Love you too. Speak more soon, I'm sure. Send my love to all those nearby, and we'll talk soon.
Okay.
All right.